Hello all, Abigail here with the astrology and tarot reading for the full moon in Leo. This full moon is on the 1st of February. It is at 3 degrees of Leo and is at 4:06 p.m. It is a very intense moment. We have had a lot of really kind of tough astrology that takes a minute to kind of disseminate. That's because all the personal planets have been passing across Pluto. Mars is still in a pretty tight orb over there, and Pluto has a pretty wide orb. So it feels like a very conflict centered moment. It also feels as though our energy has been scattered and kind of, we're being pulled this way and that for very good reason. But this moon feels like a moment of kind of pulling this all back together. It is, of course, in Leo as a full moon, and then we have the sun in opposition in Aquarius. It is in an opposition with Mars as well, and so there is this kind of tenuous pull as Mars is between the sun and Pluto in this moment, kind of battling for the energy of Pluto that kind of sucks in and overwhelms and kind of pulls things in a magnetic way, and the sun that's kind of calling for action and a need for progression. And so it might be a moment where we can feel helpless, but it's also a moment of coming home, coming back to self. This lunation is ruled by the sun. It is about the self and the ego and who we are as a person, regardless of if you have Leo or not in your chart. I find that the house where Leo exists is a lot of where our kind of sense of identity comes from, where our vibrancy and warmth comes from, obviously ruled by wherever our sun actually is, if we are not a Leo. And so this moment, it feels like a call to kind of come back to ourselves, to ground and to settle, to make plans, but to also recognize that, the best laid plans can also go awry because we are being undone by Pluto at the same time. I don't always bring this up, but when we kind of have fewer planetary aspects, I pull in the asteroid goddesses, and we have two involved in this moment. We have Ceres in a trine over in Aries, and we have Vesta in opposition, the closest opposition of any of those celestial bodies, so closer than Mars. Venus is also kind of in opposition, but it's right out of orb, so I don't really, it's still affecting things. This is still going to have aspects of relationship and comfort and ideals and, our convictions kind of pulled in, but it's not quite as tense because we're kind of shifting away with Mercury and Venus kind of heading into like the final decan of Aquarius. And so in this moment, we'll look at those asteroid goddesses. We have Vesta, which is about the things that we adore, the things that we, I don't want to say idolize, but things that we venerate, how we practice adoration, how we practice care, how we show dedication, especially when it comes to spiritual matters, how we worship and elevate things and kind of spiritualize comes from Vesta. And in Aquarius, it is, kind of, I heard someone call Aquarius the heretic, and I would agree. This is the doing of things in a way that the general public and society won't agree to. It's about being the healer or the person who pushes against the flow of things as they are and calls us back to things as they should be. And so in this moment, this is also a time, I think, to reconnect with our spiritual path, to recalibrate where we would like to go with that. To also just ask ourselves, like, what is my practice? What am I doing? How do I incorporate worship in my life? Because here's the deal, even people who don't believe in anything worship something. They venerate something. They uphold and honor something. Maybe instead of a practice, it's their parents. Maybe it's the way they were raised. Maybe maybe it's their job. Maybe it's capitalism. Everyone has a Vesta placement, and everyone tends to and cares for things. Vesta is also called Hestia. She took care of the hearth. It is the way that we tend to and we value and we show care. My Vesta is actually in Aquarius, so we're coming up on my return here in a minute. And the way that I show care is through consistency and through maybe unconventional ways to find connection. I've never taken the beaten path, but there is a Saturnian kind of pattern to my practice. So I would encourage you to look up where your Vesta placement is, see where it is in the context of this moment, how maybe you can activate it and understand it better in order to understand better who you are. Because Vesta really shows the places in which we care for things, especially symbolic things, things that don't necessarily have like a pulse, maybe even like, tending to a hearth is its own energy, but the hearth itself, as far as we know, doesn't have like full automation. So how we take care of the things that kind of exist in their own pattern. Also, we have Ceres over off in a trine, and Ceres is about care and parenthood and tending to things in another way. Um, Ceres in my practice is a lot about how children will come if you are interested in children. They've not necessarily, it's not with astrology, it's never one to one, but we have a Ceres trine. There's an ignition of care, there's an ignition of power. Ceres is Demeter. Um, uh, Ceres is the Roman name, Demeter is the Greek name. And, you know, she was in charge of the harvest and the seasons and making sure people were fed and could make it through the winter. And so, how are you caring? And with it in Aries, trying this moon, like, what is the drive? What is the force of care that you have in your life? And, maybe in this moment it feels a bit lacking or you feel a bit distant from it, and coming back to what care means. And Ceres also can often symbolize the passing down of trauma from mother to child or from parent to child, because Ceres and Persephone are mother and daughter. And so, the ways in which our childhoods have affected us, have changed us. Sorry, I gotta. Ironically, once again, as well, my Ceres is also in Aries. So how has our upbringing and the nurture that we have experienced, how does that translate into how we nurture and care for other people, with that being colored by where that placement is? And so this moon is deeply spiritual and profound and about who we are and what we need and how we meet the needs of others. And you can never escape the energy of Leo. It is the self, it is kind of that force that we are born with that makes us who we are and often drives our ego and desire. And I'm not someone who actually hates ego. I think ego is essential to being a human. I think we need ego to survive and to live and to move through things. Now, an ego unchecked, an ego that is wounded, an ego that lashes out, obviously that can cause harm and destruction. But a well-tended ego, a well-fed ego, is the power to stand up for ourselves, is the ability to know what we want and desire. And this full moon feels like a moment where we're kind of recalibrating that compass that we have that kind of pushes us towards a certain direction. And so I would encourage you to kind of ask yourself, where am I headed? What do I want? What sets me alight? We also have Mars in opposition, so like, how am I going to get there? While taking into context, very Pluto, the situation that we are in each individual generation, in each individual place and time, and how we would like our legacy to be continued through the collective, because everything else is in Aquarius. Well, not everything, but very much a lot of everything else is in there. And also a reminder that this is, we have Neptune in Aries now as well. So this is also kind of our first full lunar moment of 2026 with Neptune and Aries, where we really get to kind of tap in. And like I said, this feels like a very spiritual moment and really starts to feel the teeth of that Neptune and Aries, where our beliefs are going to be challenged, our drive is going to be challenged, the delusions that we have are going to come up against things, and some of us will double down. Some of us will shift our perspectives. Also, very much depends on where this is in your chart. So definitely go look up where Aries is. Aries is getting a lot of pressure now because Saturn will be entering in a couple of weeks. So this is a moment to check in with ourselves. I also think this is a good moment for rage. We have a Mars opposition. Things are frustrating. Mars is still in orb of both the sun and of Pluto. Mars is a bit more comfortable in the combustion, but in that comfort, it can become complacent. And also, there is a lack of visibility. So it can feel as though we're flailing, but this can be a moment where, in the flailing, we come back to who we are and what we need and what we would like to advocate for and protect going forward, taking into account the Aries and Vesta aspects of this time. So I would encourage you in this moment, in this lunation, please maybe incorporate some movement would be a suggestion that I have. Dance, one second, my dog. Reginald, no, baby. There have been maintenance men in and out all morning, and he is on edge, especially since we had a building walkthrough yesterday, which always throws both of us off. But yeah, this is a time to check in with ourselves. It's also a time to celebrate yourself. Oftentimes, the asteroid goddesses, we can see them in service to others a lot of times, but in this moment, it is in service to yourself and to your spiritual path, to what you deserve as a soul, and also kind of retapping into your ethos and your drive. I also think for some of you, this is about finding your way spiritually, finding your home spiritually with Vesta and where you want to tend to something. Do you have an altar in your house? Maybe that is or is not a path for you, but it is something very much to consider. Oh, and also kind of important to note, while it's not really fully interacting in this moment, we do have Uranus currently stationing direct. And so there is this kind of, I feel like in this moon, we have to be thoughtful because there is this feeling with where Mars is, with its adjacency to the sun, with, Venus and Mercury are still in orb of the sun. They're not technically combust anymore, but they are under this. Well, Venus is still combust. Mercury is what's something that's called under the sun's rays. Combust is a little more than 8 degrees out from the sun, and under the sun's rays is a little more than 17. So yeah, they're still being kind of obscured. It does create chaos when this happens. Very much forces us to be honest with ourselves, but definitely uncomfy for sure. All right. Ooh, got some cards flying. Yeah, this all makes so much sense. Oh, that's nice. Okay. Ooh, spicy. Okay. Also, big note. I don't know why I forgot and left this to here. This is also the final non-eclipse lunation until we head into the end of Pisces season. The next one is our first fixed sign Aquarius eclipse since we've had the Taurus eclipses. The Taurus Scorpio eclipses about 4.5 years ago, and the last time we had something similar to this would have been the opposition of Aquarius and Leo, would have been 9 years, and the last time that we've had these exact eclipses, 18 years. And so just recognize that's what's happening. This is bright side a North Node eclipse. So there is a sense of progress coming forward, but Aquarius eclipses and fixed sign eclipses, I find, tend to be really impactful, often really difficult because you are, with mutable and cardinal signs, there is this sense of change. One is beginning, one is ending. The eclipses bring change, but with the fixed signs, it is about that stability in the middle, and the eclipses turn that on its head. So we are also headed into this moment, marks the official beginning of that eclipse, that 2-week eclipse portal on one side, and then we'll have the 2-week on the other side. So there's like a little peak in the middle with that eclipse. So just know that this is also a precursor to that. And this idea that I mentioned of coming home to self and like getting a spiritual practice going, very important for stabilizing as we move into the eclipses, to hold on to our sense of self, look where the nodes are, look where Aquarius and Leo are to know where the nodes are headed next, because the nodes haven't shifted yet. They're still solidly in Virgo and Pisces, but by July we will have them in Aquarius and in Leo, and we will have another partial set of eclipses end of 2020, well, mid 2026, and then go into the full cycle before you head into another cycle of a different axis. So just know that we are also in the middle of a really big beginning. And these eclipses are going to be something extra special. I've been feeling them build. Normally, I feel them within the regular kind of time period, but I've been feeling these builds since we moved into this year. So just know they're on their way. Anyways, into our tarot reading, which honestly, I really love. It is really sweet and a reminder of all of the beautiful good things that are in Leo: spontaneity, joy. There's a childlike sense if you know a Leo. Um, Firstly, caveat depending on their placements, if they have a lot of Saturn, maybe not. But there is a childlike aspect. There is a joy and a fire in Leos that can be quite endearing. And we start off with our lovely Page of Wands. You know, this is a time, as I said, to come home to self, to get in touch with our ethos and our identity and our desires and our cravings, and really ask ourselves, what is essential to me moving forward? And I also think, depending on where this lunation falls in your chart and what I'm seeing in the cards, I also think this is like, are the communities, and this kind of ties back to our Six of Cups here, are the communities, are the connections that I have now really facilitating who I am, what I desire, and what I want to carry through into this next 6, 12, whatever level of kind of lunar cycle you want to follow. What I'm carrying in these months, and, coming back to creativity and joy as a motivator, and also rage and passion and fire, and throwing off being accountable for other people's mistakes. Now, yes, do we have to participate in repair and reparation and things like that because of the behavior of other people, especially depending on the people group you're involved in? Absolutely. But as far as like being individually responsible for the violence of someone else, um, besides holding them accountable, no. And this is about you accepting your responsibility for what you can handle, knowing that other people also deserve agency. Other people also deserve to be in control and in charge of their lives, even if you feel like you can help them do it better. We do also, like I said, we have the Six of Cups, kind of goes back to that letting other people have their own things, but also um, the kind of sweet interconnection that we have with others, but coming back to it in a really um, gentle and sweet way, in a caring way, maybe pulling away some of the strands of like forced obligation and returning to it more as not a burden of care, but a connection and a desire of care, and the fact that, care deserves to be reciprocated, and, we're all intertangled and intertwined, and everyone can help each other. It's it's a need to come back to like a more childlike sense of care. Like when you see, sometimes toddlers can really hate smaller babies because it is a competition for resources. But if you've ever seen a toddler um, kind of recognize that this little thing is a baby, and coming in and trying to be helpful by like giving them a toy that's too big for them, handing them, trying to like hand them something they can't eat yet. It very much feels like that, us coming back to recognizing everyone else's proximity to us and how we can give and receive, even if it's a little coarse and a little silly and we don't know what we're doing. It's about accepting that we're kind of in that fumbling, bumbling part of life, and it's okay to kind of stumble forward with our best intentions, learning as we go, connecting with others, finding like care and reciprocation and kind of silly places where maybe we wouldn't have seen ourselves in that role, but we have been called and are required. And so, in a Six of Cup way, we offer up what we have to share with those that we love. And then we do have this Two of Cups, which really definitely ties into this. Whatever the dynamic, there is a really strong sense with everything in Aquarius of connecting through community, connecting through our differences, um, connecting through our understandings, our own individual understandings around loss and grief. you know, knowing that we can come together with different experiences and different forms of care and connection and find something really sweet and poignant in the middle. Um, it really feels as though raw connection, raw care, raw integration, and um, participation are what is required. We don't need to fine tune our connection to community. We don't need to fine tune our relationships. We need to come as we are, ready to do what we can. Um, Perfectionism and nitpicking and um, purity standards. And I'm not talking about bettering yourself and educating yourself. That's not purity stuff, even though some people want to claim it is. But like believing that you have to have everything in line in order to do something is a tool of capitalism and a tool of a society that wants to elevate people with more resources and less intellect and less compassion. So come to the table, come to connection, your raw, untrimmed self. Also, maybe not so much now, but several years ago, there was a lot of language about needing to heal before we enter into relationships, specifically romantic, but also friendships. Like you need to go heal and take care of yourself before you get into these connections with people so like you don't make other people suffer. And I don't believe in that. No, we should not obviously be like scattering our sorry baby scattering our trauma on people willy-nilly and not recognizing where we are placing accountability and responsibility on others. But the only way to heal relational trauma is to be in relationship. The only way to find community is to be in community. We also have this page of cups. It's about coming forward honestly and with curiosity with our emotions and with the situations we're in, recognizing that things can be messy, but that our intentions are good. And as long as we don't just coast on intention is never enough. But as long as we have those intentions and we flush them out with knowledge and understanding and context, we can honestly participate in community and healthily give and share. I also love this one has a red thread in it, which is a lot to say about fate and destiny and karmic paths. And when I say karmic, I don't mean the whole like, oh, karma's going to get you. That's not really how karma works. Karma is just basic cause and effect. Even if you do something good, there will be karma from it. It's not this whole like weird thing that's kind of come about by the Western kind of co opting of this idea where we've turned it into like a secondary placeholder for like God coming after you because you've done something bad. But there is a sense of reciprocity. Reciprocity. My dyslexia is eating me alive. We'll go reciprocity in this moment, knowing that it does not have to be perfect, but it does need to be. That we do have to share and we do have to care and connect and we do have to allow our passion to have reign and know that it will not be perfect, but that if we are in community, we can hone and attune it over time, taking and receiving from others. We can never talk about the self in isolation. The self does not exist alone. It never does. Even if you are the biggest introvert, you still do not live in a vacuum. And so this is a moment where we get to sit with ourselves and our desires and our passions, recognizing that our kind of shift in our compass of us, the compass of who we are, is going to have a effect on our environment, an effect on our relationships. And I know for a lot of people, this is a tough relational time. If you are partnered, it is tough relational time. If you are single, it's a tough relational time. If you have friend stuff, it can be a tough relational time. A lot of people are showing how little they care about community, while also conversely, some people are showing how absolutely dedicated and wonderful and connected they are when it comes to community. And so, in this moment, I encourage you to come as you are to this full moon with everything that you are. I've talked to people all the time, like moving through your 20s, it's a time of self exploration and seeing what parts of yourself are truly you and what parts are not. And yeah, we can continue this story throughout life, but at some point, you do just have to accept who you are. You just do. You just have to accept that you are who you are. And in this full moon, we have to accept all of us. And yeah, there are parts of ourselves that we can better, but a lot of our parts are just who we are, and we just kind of have to find our place in it. And that kind of reminds me of our last card. Last but not least, Ten of Pentacles. Um, Also, my ADHD just took hold. I hate the lighting of this video. It's because the sun's really bright outside. So if I look like a gremlin in a cave, that's why. My eyeshadow does not look this dark off camera. It does speak to me being up the last few nights crying, but it is the season with that Mars Pluto conjunction. Anyways, 10 of Coins. This is about knowing who we are so we can connect to others, knowing who we are so that we can participate healthily in community. We can find those who connect and who love us. This also to me speaks of upcoming abundance and joy. I do think it's probably on the other side of those eclipses. But in 2026, there are some really special gifts. And a lot of them include collective connection and care, coming together as a group and sharing, rather than viewing success as this kind of isolated idea. And, once again, we can kind of misunderstand the archetype of Leo. Leo is the self and the essence of self, but it also has that opposition to Aquarius, which is we are individuals within a collective, and who we are as an individual informs the collective, and also the collective informs who we are. And this Ten of Pentacles is about our participation in the collective, our sharing at a table, our joint fate together as the working class, as the working poor. If you are if you are several paychecks away from not having a home, if something goes wrong, you are part of the working poor. And so this moon is also about class solidarity through the lens of ourselves. Instead of seeing ourselves as individuals who are fighting against the collective, we're individuals as a part of the collective that should be fighting together. And we should not let the powers that be come for us. I do find it really interesting that all of these are minor arcana, so it is this personal tender moment for the self. I encourage you to cry. I encourage you to connect with your spirits, to do some kind of veneration or ritual to whoever you serve under this, and also to take care of yourself and to give yourself the connection and care that you so deeply give to others in this Leo full moon. Anyways, my loves, I wish you a very blessed Leo full moon. If you enjoy my stuff, please like and subscribe. Also, if you have any questions, pop them in the comments. I'm always available to chat. I love hearing from you all. But I hope that this is a moment where you can truly kind of touch base with yourself. If you're having some issues accessing that during this time, take a little trip, little Six of Cups trip down memory lane to view yourself, your past self, and see and recognize how far you've come, and also what you can re-embrace from parts of yourself that maybe have been stifled over the years. There's a sense of reintegration in this moment, and Mars is in there demanding action but not really giving major solution. And so we do the little things, we connect, we listen to ourselves, we dance, we sing, we do Martian things. I think connection is going to come through movement rather than through the intellect in this moment. So keep that in mind. All right, my loves, I wish you a blessed week. The week ahead video will be out soon. And I will be offering some eclipse offerings in my IG stories, which are always a bit discounted. So if you need a little bit of support, those are there for you. And I will see you all later.